a spontaneous and unrehearsed interview.
Well, hello, and welcome to the 114th episode of Curiosityness. I'm Travis DeRose, the host, and here's the deal. Route 66, it's happening. We're finally doing the full Route 66 from Chicago to LA. We're going east to west. We're heading westernly on Route 66. They've kind of done stuff before on the West Coast, but never really done the full thing. We're doing the whole trip in the RV for a month. So, I'm doing a whole Route 66 series on this. I love it. I'm so excited for all this. So I've been immersing myself in the Route 66 world for a while now. But here's the deal. You can check out curiosityness.com/Route66 or visiting 66.com. I got a URL, and that'll redirect to Curiosityness. Okay, so go to visiting66.com. I'll have a link to it in the description. But there's going to be tours and kind of visiting videos from all the stops and attractions and points of interest along Route 66. I'm going to be interviewing the people who are on Route 66 and, that make it so special and all that stuff. So I'm so excited for that. So visit visiting66.com to see all that. I'm also going to have a Google map that I've saved of basically all the points of interest. They're going to be all saved on there. So if you're going to do your own tour, you can go and check that stuff out and see hours when they're open, how to get there, everything like that. I'm just going to have a ton of stuff on there. There's going to be we're going to look at where all the Cars movie inspiration stuff came from. There's going to be the interviews from the Route 66 associations from different states. I got Kansas, Oklahoma, and California. So just a ton of good stuff. If you're taking a Route 66 trip, or if you're just interested in Route 66, you can follow along with our trip. We're doing a 30 days on Route 66. Can you believe it? We're going to see everything, hopefully, unless things go bad, which may happen. But, okay, that's the intro for that. This episode is Jim Hinkley, so he's like the father of Route 66, the father of the Mother Road. Jim Hinkley was so fun to talk to. He's got such he just gets you so excited about Route 66. And he's written 19 books. He's got his own podcast. He's got his own YouTube. So he's like the Heel Hauser of Route 66, or the Rick Steves of Route 66, I'd say. So that's what this episode is. It's a really good kind of primer intro. We talk about kind of the history of Route 66, what happened to it, why it's so special, and along with some travel tips and that kind of stuff. So let's get to the episode. Remember, visit visiting66.com for kind of the whole series on this, and I'll share that in the link again, or in the description to click on. But let's get to episode 114 with Jim Hinkley. Mr. Jim Hinkley, how you doing? Pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming here.
Yeah, you betcha.
I love your background too. You got the cozy dog back there. You got the Jim Hinkley. I love it.
Thank you.
So very excited to talk to you. I feel like what do you have? You have 19 books published. You've got your audio podcast. I feel like you're the father of the Mother Road. It's crazy how much stuff you have going here. I love it. I'm so glad I found you and your content, and I feel like it's an honor to be speaking with you even.
Well, thank you. Now my hat won't fit.
Yes. Yeah. That can happen sometimes. But no, I'm very excited to talk to you. And I guess with all that, are you tired of Route 66 yet, Jim? Are you done with it?
No. People ask me how long it takes to see Route 66, and I always tell them I have no idea. I've only been doing it since 1959, and I am that old. But it's not just Route 66. I focus on the American Southwest, American automotive history.
Yes.
And it all blends together in a package. And the whole idea is to add depth and context to mundane subjects.
Yeah, no, you do focus on car culture and stuff a bit in your books too, which I find very interesting. I love that.
Yeah, I started out, my first writing was on the American auto industry from roughly 1885 through 1945. And I grew up on the road, traveled all my life. My folks teased me I was potty trained along Route 66. And but they morphed together. As an example, in 1915, Edsel Ford and his college buddies, they followed the National Old Trails Road west to California, which was the predecessor to Route 66. So automotive history and Route 66, all these things kind of blend together.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely, of course, we classic cars on Route 66. So you had kind of mentioned it. I want to dive into, I want to get the basics here done, and what is Route 66? Why does it exist? You kind of mentioned the predecessor of it. Why are we talking about Route 66 right now? How did it begin?
Well, first of all, Route 66 is not America's oldest highway. It's not its most scenic highway. But from its inception, it's always had the best press and publicity. And as a result, at some point in its history, it morphed into something more than just a highway. It came to symbolize the American experience. Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz did a several-part series of their travels from New York to California, and it was on Route 66. The most recorded song in history is that little tune about getting your kicks on Route 66. Everybody has recorded that. The Beatles, Mick Jagger, Pat Boone. It's Polish polka bands have done renditions of that song. The U.S. Highway 66 Association in 1927 began marketing Route 66 as the main street of America. And working with the Olympic Committee in 1932, they began marketing Route 66 as the road to the Olympics in Los Angeles. Then you had the song, the movie Grapes of Wrath, the television show, Easy Rider. All of these things had a Route 66 connection.
Was it really, I don't know if I'm remembering something wrong, but was it the first kind of paved road kind of mostly across the country?
Well, no, it took quite a while. It's kind of an interesting and long story. It really goes back to President John Adams, John Quincy Adams, who proposed the idea of building a national road system. And it never went anywhere. We got a few roads done, the Beale Wagon Road here in northwestern Arizona, which Route 66 later followed, was one of the first federally funded roads in the Southwest. But with the advent of the railroad, that concept of a national highway system, a national road system, kind of went on the back burner.
Okay.
And then it was the bicycle. In 1880s, and then in the 1890s, it really exploded. An absolute national mania for bicycles. We had like 20 companies manufacturing bicycles in 1890, and by 1895, we had 500 plus companies manufacturing bicycles.
Jeez.
And it was we had bicycle clubs organizing trips from Detroit to St. Louis, touring all these things. But the problem was there were no damn roads. They were just ruts. They were goat trails. They were wagon trails. So the League of American Wheelmen was formed as a lobbying organization for the bicycle enthusiast. And part of the component of that was petitioning for good roads. And that was the cornerstone for the good roads movement. And while all this bicycle mania was taking place, we started having the development of the American auto industry. The Duryea brothers in Massachusetts became the first to mass produce, or I should say, manufacture automobiles for sale. This is about 1894, 1895. But nobody knew what to do with what an automobile even was. In 1895, Barnum & Bailey's Circus gave top billing over the albino and the fat lady for a Duryea motor wagon. And Montgomery Ward said, "Come and see the fad before it passes."
The fad.
In 1898, we had the first automobile race in the United States. So you got the bicycles, you got the cars all coming up, but the problem again, no roads, none. Alexander Wenton was one of the first pioneering automobile manufacturers. And in 1901, he wanted to prove the viability of automobiles. So he took one of his cars to San Francisco with an attempt to drive to the East Coast. 2 weeks later, he quit out in the Nevada desert because there were no damn roads, none. He was fording streams, things of this nature. Dr. Jackson in 1903 became the first person to drive across the United States in an automobile. It took him 63 days.
Wow.
But there was no roads. There was a growing attempt, the Good Roads Association, the Good Road movements. The political things they encountered largely one of the big arguments was that creation of a national highway system would be socialist. It would give rise to socialism in America. Interesting. I think I've heard this somewhere recently. Anyway, this mantra's been around for a while. But the Good Roads Association started picking up the tab. They started building roads like the Lincoln Highway, the first coast-to-coast automobile road. But roads were dictated by money. Harvey Firestone, Packard Corporation, started putting these automotive roads together. But they were still basically dirt trails with minor improvements. The National Old Trails Road, I had mentioned, it was put in 1913 from Maryland to California. And it was knit together America's historic trails. The Santa Fe Trail, the Beale Wagon Road, some of these were knit together as an automobile road. Mm-hmm. And tourism was a big part of this, pushing this. And the other thing that's interesting in this period, we have this blending, this collision, if you will, of the past and the present. Buffalo Bill Cody, he was one of the directors on the National Old Trails Road Association. He bought his first automobile in 1905. But the good roads were developing, but it was still problematic. Roads would change. All of a sudden, Kingman doesn't have the money to maintain their section of road, but Yucca, Arizona does. Well, we'll bypass Kingman then. We'll go to Yucca. So your map that you had last week, now the road goes 60 miles in a different direction. To put it into perspective, how bad the roads were, even though traffic was increasing exponentially. In 1915, over 20,000 people traveled the National Old Trails Road to California for the Panama Pacific Exposition. And the reason they chose that road instead of the Lincoln Highway or others was the Grand Canyon, the Painted Desert, the tourism aspect.
Sure.
But Edsel Ford and his college buddies, in his journal for July 15th, 1915, he notes that he left Williams, Arizona in the morning and arrived in Kingman, Arizona at midnight at the Brunswick Hotel. And he said, "Good day's run." That was 156 miles.
Wow. And
that was considered a good day's run.
Yeah, that's tough.
So we fast forward to 1924-25, and it gains ground where Cyrus Avery and others were able to push creation of a U.S. highway system. And initially, it was a lot of these, like the National Old Trails Road, they just simply put up signs and called it Route 66. It would be 1936 before Route 66 was fully paved.
Wow.
My pa always said, better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all.
Sure.
The last U.S. highway to be fully paved was U.S. 6. There was a section of that road along the Nevada and Utah border that was still gravel road until 1952.
Oh, wow.
So it took a while for the roads to develop.
Yeah. Something that you don't even really, a struggle that we, at least here in the LA, Southern California area, have no problem with finding. The roads aren't the best, but there's roads everywhere. I can buy a car. I don't have to worry about, finding a road to drive it. But it does remind me, interestingly, how it's kind of similar to electric cars now, it seems like, doesn't it? Where people are a little hesitant to buy it because there wasn't the electric car infrastructure yet to travel. And now, there's been people who have kind of traveled across country or different ways to kind of prove that, electric cars are getting there.
Well, yeah, in the early years, gasoline was a serious problem. There was on Dr. Jackson's trip, for example, there were times where he would run out of gas and walk 10 to 15 miles to get gasoline, and you would pay $2-3 a gallon. Whereas, like in Detroit at that time, you could buy gasoline relatively cheap. Gasoline was sold in jugs through your local stores and different things.
Really?
But you mentioned electric vehicles. This will surprise you. Electric vehicles have always been viable for urban areas, but what's changing is now long distance. Mm-hmm. I do not know how slow Mr. Bliss was, but he has the dubious distinction of being the first pedestrian struck and killed by an automobile in the United States.
Wow.
In 1898. And he was struck and killed by an electric taxi cab in New York City.
Really?
Before 1912 and the advent of the electric starter for automobiles, a large percentage of your automobiles built were electric. And it was easier, like in the Northeast, Boston, different places. It was easier to find a place to charge your batteries than it was to buy gasoline.
Huh. Wow, you would never have thought that. I mean, I've seen, old, they seem like we have the Peterson Museum here in LA, and They got some old electric vehicles there, but never realized that it would be easier actually to get, to charge up your battery there than to get gasoline. That's insane. Yeah.
And if you go to the Peterson next time, have you ever gone down the vault?
No, never been in the vault. No.
Okay, they've got a car down there that'll really trip your trigger down in the vault. It's called a Woods Dual Power, and Woods was a pioneer electric company. They started around 1900, and again, some of that useless trivia that might come in handy on Jeopardy someday. The first car imported into Hawaii was a car built by Woods, who built electric automobiles. In 1916-17, Woods came up with this revolutionary car. They advertised it as a car that soils the air less. And it had a 4-cylinder gas engine and dual generators. When you drove it in town 20 miles an hour or so, it was an electric car. And on the highway, it was a 4-cylinder gasoline-powered car.
No way.
How about that? A hybrid.
Yeah. That is amazing. This technology we think is so revolutionary and special. It's been around hundreds of years.
The science behind it has been there and known. The problem is like battery technology. The problem with those early electric cars, a lot of them were dry cells, and you would have literally 2,000 pounds of batteries, and at 25 miles an hour, you could drive 150 miles. At 25 miles an hour. They weren't, the technology wasn't there yet.
Yeah, they weren't the hot rods that the Tesla Roadster is today yet.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so, man, Jim, you are just full of knowledge. It's fun talking to you. I love this. But so getting back to kind of Route 66, was it really the tourism that sparked it initially, and kind of how it grew to an icon status?
Well, tourism's always been a big part of Route 66. Just as with here in the Southwest, I mentioned the National Old Trails Road. Originally, it was Trail to Sunset. A fellow named A.L. Westgard started mapping automobile roads, and he mapped Trail to Sunset, which interestingly had the same eastern terminus as Route 66 a dozen years later in Chicago. Trail to Sunset went diagonal across Arizona from Springerville down to Yuma, where it connected to the Ocean Highway. And then in 1913, when the National Old Trails Road came in, they used Trail to Sunset in the Southwest and National Old Trails Road as the same course. In late 1913, some businessmen in Kingman, Arizona, and Needles, California, with some backing from the railroad, attended the National Old Trails Road convention in Kansas City. And they made a pitch to reroute the National Old Trails Road across northern Arizona and across the deserts of California. And there were 3 primary arguments for this. One, hotels. The railroad would parallel the railroad. It would follow the Beale Wagon Road and the Spanish Trail and the Old Mojave Road So it would be one of the historic roads, the National Old Trails Road. The railroad had established hotels, so you would have good quality lodging along the way, and tourism, because if you did that, you'd be going through the Painted Desert, the Petrified Forest. You'd have access to Santa Fe, the ancient city of Santa Fe. You would have all these marketing opportunities. And there was a fourth reason, and it wasn't marketed a lot. But anybody who had an automobile, the light went on as soon as they heard this. When you destroyed your car on these roads, you could load it on the train and ship the parts home. And that's what happened. Like with Emily Post in 1915, she wrote a book called By Motor to the Golden Gate, and it's been reprinted. It's a great book about her trip from New York to California. And her car, by the time she got to around Holbrook, Arizona, was pretty much done. She put it on the train and shipped it the rest of the way to California.
Wow.
And they just built on this. Here in the Southwest, from Las Vegas, New Mexico, all the way to Los Angeles, Route 66 roughly followed the National Old Trails Road. And the U.S. Highway 66 Association jumped on that bandwagon. This is the gateway to the Grand Canyon, the wonders of the Southwest, the Painted Desert, the Petrified, all these great, wonderful things. So tourism played a huge part in marketing and developing Route 66.
Yeah. So is that do you think is that the main reason why we're talking about Route 66 now and not the Lincoln Highway or something?
No, it is part of it. But like I say, it's always had the best press and publicity. And it's morphed over the years into something larger than life. It's come to symbolize the quintessential American road trip, if you will, the great American experience. A few years ago, I was in Anaheim at a conference, and I was very privileged to hear a fellow who's since become a very good friend, Zdeněk Jurisic of the Czech Republic. It was a conference about Route 66, and a lot of the people that were in attendance were the people you envision in your mind, the capitalists that have no problem evicting grandmother into the snow on Christmas. You know, they're that kind of mentality. They were bankers and things of this nature. Mm-hmm. And when Zdeněk spoke about Route 66, there was hardly a dry eye in the place. Wow. He talked about growing up in a communist country. He was from the Czech Republic. And bootleg copies of Easy Rider, the song, Get Your Kicks on Route 66, all of this for his generation, the road trip, Route 66, motorcycles. He said that came to symbolize freedom for his generation like the Statue of Liberty did for a previous generation.
Oh, okay.
And for Americans, surprisingly, the silver lining with COVID is that Americans are starting to rediscover the joy of the road trip because it's been faded a lot. Mm-hmm. It surprises people that until 2020, depending on who you talk to, 60 to 80% of your travelers on Route 66 were internationals.
Yeah, that is shocking. I never would have thought.
I work with 32 tour companies before COVID, organizing events, helping with tours, things of that nature. And 28 of those companies are based in other countries, and they specialize in Route 66 trips with side trips to the Grand Canyon, Monument Valley, the great romance of the Southwest, the tourism. But they specialize in Route 66 tours. Sure. There's been 2 European Route 66 festivals now. I was privileged to speak at both. The 2018 festival was in Zlin, the Czech Republic. There was over 20,000 people from 10 countries celebrating Route 66, American music, and American cars.
Wow. That is pretty cool. That's very fun.
There's Route 66 associations in about a dozen countries that organize events, festivals, tours. They write guidebooks. There's Route 66 associations in Australia, Japan, Germany, the Netherlands, Czech Republic, Norway, Italy, France. Yeah.
That's insane, yeah. And because I've heard it's kind of compared, if you're going to come visit the United States, you can go to a city or something, or why not go through Route 66? You get Chicago, LA, and everything in between. You get kind of the whole, American experience, I guess.
And you get that Southwest tourism that's so big. because not only Route 66, but the American Western, the John Wayne movies, these things. A little tidbit for you. Bonanza was so popular in Germany in the early 60s, they tried to have the show banned because when it came on at night, theaters, bars, restaurants had about a 40% drop in business. People stayed home to watch this. The romanticism of the Southwest linked with Route 66 drives this whole deal.
Yeah. Wow.
You know what the most amazing thing about Route 66 is?
What's that?
Doesn't exist.
What do you mean?
Route 66 was officially decertified as a U.S. highway in 1985.
Ah, yes.
So technically, officially, Route 66 hasn't existed for 20-some years.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And yet we have this incredible fan club.
We do.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but I just am still a bit unclear as, why were songs written about Route 66 and as opposed to the Lincoln Highway? What did it just sort of kind of organically snowball and we don't really know why?
Well, yeah, it was organically snowballed, but with a nudge from marketing.
Okay.
Well, we start out, Route 66 was certified in November 1926. And Cyrus Avery was quite a visionary fellow. He was a pioneer in some of the early good roads associations. And he pioneered the Oklahoma Highway Department. He was the first to implement gasoline tax to fund the Highway Department. He was involved with a lot of these things, and he was appointed to the commission to help create the U.S. highway system, a numbered U.S. highway system. Mm. And by April 1927, he had organized with some other visionary businessmen and leaders in states and organized the U.S. Highway 66 Association. And the U.S. highway system came into being in 1925-26, so he was very early. And it was a twofold campaign. Promote Route 66 above other highways, as a destination itself. This is your main route across the heartland of America. This is the route tourism. This is the one to get to L.A., to Chicago. Plus, lobbying to have the road paved from end to end. Mm-hmm. That was a big push. That was in 1927. In 1928, we had a sports promoter, C.C. Pyle. They called him Cash and Carry Pyle. He hatched up this harebrained scheme for a transcontinental foot race. Sports writers called it the Bunyan Derby. And he needed a backing. The U.S. Highway 66 Association saw opportunity in this. So they jumped on board to help with promotion and become a sponsor. The race went from Los Angeles to Chicago along Route 66 and then to New York. It got international attention for a couple good reasons. And of course, when this foot race got attention, the spotlight was on Route 66.
Right.
The reason the spotlight was on this is Mr. Pyle was offering a $20,000 purse to the winner. Ooh. There was a $500 entrance fee.
Oh, geez.
Well, with a $20,000 purse, you attract a big rate. I mean, ultra marathon runners, Olympic runners from all over the world. So you have international press and media. But what exploded the story more than this was Andy Payne. He was a 19-year-old Cherokee boy from Foyle, Oklahoma. Little tiny farming community. It's still a little tiny farming community on Route 66. And the town raised the money, $500, to send him to L.A. and enter.
Oh, how cool.
But they couldn't afford shoes. He started this thing out barefoot. Then he got shoes donated, and it became a David and Goliath story. By the time that the racers reached the Oklahoma state line, this 19-year-old boy was ahead of the pack. He won the race. Well, he used the $20,000 to pay off his family's farm, and today there's a statue in a park in Foyle, right on the junction of Route 66, and the main street is Andy Payne Boulevard.
Wow, that is so cool.
Spotlights on Route 66.
Yeah.
In 1932, the Route 66 Association partnered with the U.S. Olympic Commission. The Olympics were in Los Angeles. Full-page ads in the New York Times about US 66, your scenic route to the Olympics,
Yeah.
Grand Canyon, all these different things. Spotlight on Route 66. The Grapes of Wrath, the book and the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Route 66.
Okay.
It was filmed on Route 66. The book was about the Okies traveling Route 66. Bobby Troop, when he, after the war, he went to California. One of the main routes, Route 66, he picked it up part way, and he started in his head, him and his wife started coming up with this song about getting your kicks on Route 66.
Ah, cool.
The song was recorded by Nat King Cole. It became #1 as a chart topper.
Mm-hmm.
Another little interesting thing about Route 66, deviating from our story a bit, even though Nat King Cole made that song an international sensation, most of the motels on Route 66 would not allow him to stay there during his travels.
Really?
Because he was black.
Yeah.
But the song went international. It became a hit all over the world. Again, Spotlight, Route 66. During World War II, Route 66 became a vital military asset. And all along Route 66, we had military bases. We had POW camps set up along Route 66.
Wow.
We had all these things along Route 66. Now, after the war, we have this boom in tourism. Family vacation comes into being. The Great American Station Wagon, the road trip, Disneyland, all these things. Where are these GIs what are they going to do? They're going to drive Route 66.
Heck yeah.
I mentioned Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and they had a top-rated television program in the 1950s. They did a 2-part episode where they drove Route 66 to California.
Mm-hmm.
And the U.S. Highway 66 Association was right there to help and jump on the bandwagon with marketing and promotion. The TV show, Route 66, was one of the top television programs in the United States when it came out. Interestingly enough, only about 5 episodes were actually filmed on Route 66. It doesn't matter. The theme song, the Corvette, 2 young men discovering America and life in their Corvette, Route 66.
Yeah. You can see,
It's always had the best press and the best publicity.
Yeah. No, that was great. I really appreciate you walking me through that. You could really see how it just grew into this. And then the Route 66 Association, were these, like, who were these people? Did they have an interest in, why were they interested in growing the Route 66?
Well, you bet. Cyrus Avery, like I say, he was quite a visionary out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And interestingly enough, he was instrumental in developing Route 66. Like say, the numbered highway system was part of his doing. He was on that commission. East and west highways had even numbers, north and south, odd numbers, and put this whole thing together. Interestingly enough, when Route 66 went through Tulsa originally, it took an odd course through Tulsa and went right past his gas station. So you had these guys, but they had a vested interest in seeing this road develop. And they were visionaries. They were ambitious. And the cities got involved. Most of the communities along the highway, Gallup, New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Flagstaff, Arizona, jumped on the bandwagon. They saw the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And exponential growth in travel, automotive development, fueled a lot of this. But Route 66, like I say, it's not our most scenic highway or historic, but it's always had the best press and publicity. And that continues. I think today Route 66 is even more popular than it was in the 30s, 40s, or 50s.
Yeah.
There was a recent study done by the World Monuments Fund about Route 66 properties, and they determined that the US 66 shield, even if people don't realize that it's a highway, they see it as a marketing symbol. That shield is more internationally recognized today than Coca-Cola.
Wow. That's impressive.
You can find Route 66 in the damnedest places, amazing places. I was in Worms, Germany, and one of the malls, in a mall, from one end of the mall to the other was a Route 66 map with all these icons from Route 66, the Gemini Giant and all these different things. And, of course, here's the Grand Canyon, here's Monument Valley, but here's Route 66 through the mall. I was in I was driving through a little German farming town, Bensheim, Germany. I doubt the population is more than 600-700 people. I had to stop and get a picture. Here's this little farmer's shed for riding lawnmowers, and it's outlined. It's got Route 66 shields all the way around the door.
Oh, my God.
Holland Electronics, the gentleman who owns Holland Electronics, all his corporate cars have personalized Route 66 license plates.
Ah, so cool.
It's just the press, the publicity, it's all there.
Yeah, people go nuts for it, myself included. I'm excited. We got a month-long RV trip coming up from Chicago to LA, so I can't wait for this.
Well, you're going to stop, but when you get this way, you holler at me, and we'll do some coffee, and I'll give you the 50-cent tour of Kangman.
Oh, all right, that'd be great. I would love that. Yeah. I'll be giving you a ring for sure, Jim.
RV travel, you mentioned that there again, COVID. The Americans, starting probably in the 80s, actually, started losing interest in road trips. Part of that's because we don't have the 2-week vacation, and we do a lot of 3-day weekends, that kind of thing. But we don't do vacations. COVID, RV sales and rentals went off the chart.
Yeah,
and people are rediscovering the Great American Road Trip and Route 66.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's great. I'm so glad to hear that there's been kind of a boom and people are rediscovering it.
Do you have your trip pretty well planned out, mapped out? Or?
We have it. It's kind of loose. So we have our start day in Chicago, of course, and then we're actually going to the Albuquerque Balloon Festival, so that we have that set. But in between there, we're just kind of going with the flow.
I'll get you some information. I'll send it to you, but I recommend Route66navigation.com. There's a really great app, very well done. I don't say it just because I developed the point of interest file, which is now got to be updated. But it's probably the best navigation app for the road.
Okay.
It's got points of interest, maps, phone numbers, contact information, restaurants, motels, historic sites, trivia, all kinds of stuff.
That's perfect.
It's about $25 a year. And the Route 66 passport is a lot of fun. You can get it, stop at different places, get it stamped, and get a souvenir along the road.
Oh, yeah, cool. I love doing stuff like that.
The interesting thing about this app and this passport, too, it's developed by a fellow named Marian Pavel, who has a company called Touch Media. Mm-hmm. And he lives in Bratislava, Slovakia.
Really?
Yes. And it's one of the top-selling apps, and this passport has just gone gangbusters in popularity.
Okay.
And until COVID, he would spend 3-4 months a year traveling Route 66, getting the business owners, building the network. And
not a bad gig, it sounds like.
Yeah, but it's a great app and something I can highly recommend.
Okay, that's good, yeah.
And the other thing I recommend, I don't know if you're familiar with this,
yes, I got my copy already.
Okay. Jerry is great. His phone number's in here, his cell phone, and he invites you to stop by his gallery and his house to get this thing signed in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Cool.
Between this and the app, that'll do you well on Route 66.
And so for people listening, it's what's it called? The Easy Guide to 66?
Yeah, Easy 66 Guide for Travelers by Jerry McClanahan.
And that'll basically keep you on Route 66.
This really exemplifies the duality, the conflicted nature of Route 66, if you will. This Easy Guide is a flip ring binder book with directions and hand-drawn maps from the artist, Jerry McClanahan. And it looks like something that you'd find in the 1950s.
Yeah.
I don't know what travel. I think this has got to be one of the largest selling guides to Route 66. Mm-hmm. And then in direct mirror opposite of this, we have the Route 66 navigation app. We have the 1950s and the 21st century.
Yeah.
And that shows the duality of the nature of Route 66.
Yeah. That's so fun. Well, and I'm glad. Thank you for mentioning that app. I was going to ask you for resources, and because it seems that's what I'm used to is the Google Maps and that kind of stuff. So it's great that there is an app to kind of help us along the way.
Well, you mentioned electric vehicles. Something we have here in Kingman. It's been a struggle. It's been like pushing a wheelbarrow full of rocks up a hill with a flat tire. But after 7 years, we're making progress. We have an embryonic, the world's only electric vehicle museum here in Kingman.
Really?
And we just made arrangements with the city of Kingman to buy an old supermarket. And we're going to start moving this forward. And it's going to be a electric vehicle museum, conferences, all of this. It's going to be a green facility as envisioned, and it'll be tied in with a community college for alternative energy programs.
Oh, that's very cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump back now. So we kind of, Route 66 is going strong. It's post World War II. People are traveling this. There's tourism is going. So what the heck happened? Why, you said it's gone. Where did it go?
Well, it never could keep up with the increase in traffic. It never could evolve fast enough. Depending on what size motorhome you're traveling with, there's a section of Route 66 here in western Arizona. It's pre-1952. You cannot take a vehicle over 35 feet over this road. It's the sharpest curves and the steepest grades anywhere on Route 66. One of the curves is so sharp that Pickwick bus lines, a predecessor to Greyhound, they literally had to back the bus up the hill into a clearing because you could not make the turn.
Wow.
This road has almost no guardrails. It is narrow. It's got 12% grades. And this was the road until 1952. Wow. In 1939 on that road, the highway department clocked 1 million vehicles on that road.
Oh, my gosh.
After the war, it increased exponentially. You had to do something. Okay. And even though creation of the interstate literally killed businesses, generational businesses, and transformed communities into literal ghost towns, it had to be done. Mm-hmm. Route 66 was known as Bloody 66, and really? Especially in the 50s. It was often, if you needed filler for newspapers, because the Route 66, US 66, that always caught attention. You could always find some horrendous crash. 10 people killed, 8 people killed. It was all the time, daily.
Oh, geez.
Because the road, during the war, attempts were made to modernize it. Illinois, Route 66 became 4-lane in most areas, a divided highway that bypassed urban centers. In Missouri, the Devil's Elbow area was bypassed for Hooker's Cut. They made a deep 4-lane highway. But when you've got a lot of the bridges on Route 66, even in the 50s, they were built in the 1920s or earlier. The road didn't have shoulders. A lot of the road, there was no shoulder on the road. And you're out here, you got some farmer with a Model A truck dragging hay down the highway, and here's somebody in a Buick Roadmaster convertible with a Fireball 8. Yeah. And it was a nightmare. It was just an absolute nightmare. The beauty of Route 66 today is you can have your cake and eat it too.
Sure.
You can get on the interstate when you're in a hurry, and you can enjoy Route 66. You can turn the clock back about 80, 90, 100 years and simply enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's exactly because that's what we're doing is, because we're here in LA. My parents are driving the RV out to Chicago right now. They're taking the interstate, just kind of doing it as quick as they can. Me and my sister are going to fly out to Chicago, meet them there, and then we'll mosey on home on Route 66. Very good.
Some great places. You're going to be really amazed. Route 66 is... I don't like to use the term magic, but it's the only way I can put it. What separates Route 66 from US 6, US 50, US 40 is the people. You'll meet the most amazing people. It literally will become a family reunion. You will meet people in Pontiac, Illinois, and then meet them again in Tucumcari, and you'll become pen pals for nothing else. You'll find yourself having pie and coffee 5 years from now because of these trips. Fascinating and passionate people. Kevin and Nancy Mueller, they just sold the Blue Swallow Motel and moved to Tucumcari. Corporate people, what we call yuppies. I know that's an older term, but 6-figure a year income. And just realizing I'm just on the treadmill constant. Mm-hmm. They bought a 1939 motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico. And they lived there for years fixing it up and things. And I talked to Kevin, and he says, I've never worked this hard in my life for this little money. And I've never enjoyed life as much as I am now.
Oh, that's great.
And it's, you'll meet amazing and passionate people. A lot of internationals, even though the international travel, which adds such a spice to the trip, you won't be able to find many of those people on the road right now because it's not, international travel won't come back until late next summer at the earliest, possibly even next fall.
Yep.
But Elkhart, Illinois, a little town, 1 block long. You cross the road, Route 66 is on the north side of the tracks. You cross the tracks, and there's the town. It's about 1 block long, neat. It's all 19th century, early 20th century buildings. There's a little cafe, a wonderful place called the Wild Hair Cafe. It's in about a 1905 bank building. The fella inside looks like he is imitating Santa Claus on vacation. Rotund fellow, white beard, bib overalls, smiles, laughs. He's a Dutch hydraulic engineer that fell in love with Route 66, and he loves woodworking. So he bought this ancient, empty bank, turned it into a restaurant. Here in Kingman, the 1939 El Trovador Motel, literal crack house, ready to be torn down. Gentleman from Israel bought it, and he's renovating the property.
Wow.
This trip is amazing. And some of the towns, Pontiac, Illinois is a definite must. These folks have been able to sell everything on the hog, including the squeal. And they've transformed the town. 20 years ago, Pontiac, with a beautiful historic district, 1870s courthouse, it was empty. They had about an 85 to 90% vacancy rate in their storefronts and businesses.
Oh my gosh.
There's a waiting list for properties.
Wow. Nice.
The Pontiac Oakland Automobile Museum opened there. The Society of Gilders, people who do the gold leaf and all this, they opened a museum in Pontiac.
Oh, that's cool.
They had a mural program, transformed the whole downtown with vintage advertisements recreated as murals. Just a vibrant, exciting town. Cuba, Missouri is another one I can't say enough about.
So, I mean, practically when we're on this trip, is this something that, do we need to plan ahead and have, kind of map out all these spots? Or if we're just driving Route 66, are we going to stumble upon these things?
If you're traveling Route 66, you'll stumble on a lot of them. It's best because of COVID to do a little bit of planning because some of these places will be closed. And I've got to update this point of interest file. We've lost a lot of stuff on Route 66.
Really?
A lot of these places were mom and pops that don't have big budgets, and they're not surviving closures. They're not going to survive 80, 90% drop in business for 2 years.
Yeah.
The flip side is new places are opening and new things are developing. And
that's good.
Yeah. And like Cuba. Cuba is a neat little town there in the Ozarks. Since you're traveling by RV, you won't need the Wagon Wheel Motel. But do stop and say hello to Connie and check the place out. It's the oldest continuously operated motel on Route 66.
Whoa.
Since about 1936. And she did this as a retirement project. She took on another crack house and redid it with modern amenities, but kept all the original stuff as much as she could. And it's a fascinating place. Right next door is a tremendous Ozark Mountains barbecue place. And right down the street is the Cuba Bakery and Deli, and it's a Mennonite-owned bakery.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, just tremendous. And food, you can tell by looking at me, I don't miss a lot of meals. And pie and cobbler, that's my weakness.
Oh, okay.
Boy, I'll tell you.
So what's the best pie on Route 66?
God, there's plenty of places. Clanton's Cafe in Veneta, Oklahoma, has a blackberry or multi-berry cobbler that's delicious. It's one family-owned restaurant since 1927.
Wow.
The Wild Hair Cafe, they have a berry cobbler. And all the stuff at the Wild Hair, the desserts come with whipped cream, real whipped cream, and a ginger snap rabbit on top. Grand Canyon Caverns has some tremendous pie. They've got a cook from, she's an elderly lady that worked on a ranch for many years. She bakes these delicious pies. Westside Lilo's in Seligman, Arizona. German food and American food, a blending of the two, and monstrous cinnamon rolls.
Oh, yeah.
Lilo is from Wiesbaden, Germany. And she's, her and her husband was military. They married in the 60s. And she carries authentic German dinners and stuff there.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. Food.
Yeah, I've been telling my family we're gonna have to see what the ratio is of like pound to mileage. Are we gonna gain a pound every 50 miles on this trip?
It wouldn't be hard at all. A great place. And speaking of gaining weight, you got to go to Uranus, Missouri.
Okay.
Hopefully Louis Keene will be there. He is one colorful character. If you're easily offended by juvenile humor, your parents or anything, don't go to Uranus.
Okay, we'll be there.
If you enjoy quintessential roadside fun, Louis he's finishing up the miniature golf course now, but he bought the world's largest collection of circus sideshow memorabilia and opened the Circus Sideshow Museum and hired this leopard-faced woman to do sword swallowing and stuff. But his claim to fame is the Fudge Factory, Uranus Fudge Company. And any juvenile humor that goes with that is on display.
Oh, that's so great. T-shirts,
hats, you name it. Big fun in Uranus. And he's got this huge neon signs. And he's got a monstrous neon sign along the highway of a Tyrannosaurus eating a UFO. But anything juvenile humor that comes up with Uranus and Fudge, they've got it. And they're doing it. And it's...
Man, I got to get me some fudge directly from Uranus. I can't wait for that.
Yes, that's exactly it. And it's delicious, delicious food.
Man, I love that. So yeah, we talked about how we'll be in a motorhome. What do you doing this trip? I've seen some people will go on motorcycles, and I think some people will even, take their classic cars and do this. What do you think is the best vehicle for Route 66?
Oh, I want to do it in a Model A Ford. That's something I've been obsessed with for a while, but that's because I was born 90 and I've never gotten older. COVID again dampened this, but this is the road of dreams. Now, there's some sections of Route 66 with a motorhome you're going to have to bypass and get on the interstate. Mm-hmm. Like there's a section in New Mexico where the road went under the railroad. And for a pickup truck and camper, it is a tight squeeze. And if it rains, the underpass there will fill up with 2 to 3 feet of water and mud. So you kind of want to bypass that part. As far as traveling Route 66, you'll see everything. We had a 35-year-old fellow last year, 34. He was from a fascinating young man, lives in New Hampshire, of all things. Out of work, COVID, and he got tired of just waiting to be called back to work. Decided, I've always wanted to do Route 66. So Sunday afternoon, he threw his toolbox, some spare parts, and his sleeping bag in an ice chest in his all-original 1929 Ford in New Hampshire, and he drove to Chicago and down Route 66. He did 8,000 miles in 3 weeks in a 29 Ford.
That's incredible.
A few years ago, we had a group motorcycle rally, and they were doing Route 66, and the only qualification is you had to have a motorcycle manufactured before 1916.
Whoa.
I met a Japanese ultra marathon runner that was recreating the classic transcontinental footways. He was running Route 66.
Oh, cool.
I've met people rollerblading Route 66.
No.
Oh, gosh, yes. My favorite, and I apologize in advance, I have a very, very dark sense of humor. A few years ago, a French mime decided to walk Route 66 end to end on 6-foot stilts and try to set a stilt walking record. He made it to Oklahoma before he had a heat stroke. And in my black humor, the first thought I had was, how does a French mime call for help in Oklahoma? But you will see just every vehicle, everything you can imagine. And my only regret with you taking the trip now is that the internationals aren't on the road as much, because it's astounding to be. It's so magical and wonderful to be sitting in a place like the Midpoint Cafe in Adrian, Texas, and here's farmers, traditional American farmers, drive up in their tractor, and here's a German motorcycle club, and they're all intermingling, having pie and coffee and talking to each other and sharing stories, and it just adds a vibrancy to the road.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And then, so yeah, we're heading out pretty soon here. When do you think is generally the best time of year to do a Route 66 trip?
I like late September through October.
Perfect.
I really enjoy that. The fall colors. You get festivals. You've got different events going on. The Balloon Festival, different thing. There's events along the road. Cuba Fest, the third week in October. I like that time a lot, but you can occasionally get into some weather issues. It can be a little wet in Illinois back there. October 2019, my last trip, and I generally do 1 or 2 trips a year, Route 66. Last year was the least amount of travel I've done since 1959. But in October 19, and it was late October, granted, Flagstaff is quite high. You get up around 7,000 feet. You can get into little snow issues.
Sure.
And October 2019, I kind of got waylaid by a day because I had a major snowstorm in the panhandle of Texas. And I had to hole up in Shamrock, Texas. I couldn't get to Amarillo. When a snowplow has slid off the road, that tells you I shouldn't be out here.
Yeah, that's a good cue. Yeah,
especially when you're in a rental Ford Focus.
Yeah, not ideal for those conditions.
No,
man. Well, this has just been so fun, Jim. You just give me such. You just make me so excited for this trip. You know, you share these stories and all these places. I really am. I'm so excited that I don't just get to talk about it with you now, but that I get to go, experience this in a couple of weeks.
You won't regret it. It's and there's some great highways. US 6 is an amazing highway. It goes all the way from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, to Bishop, California. Originally, it went all the way to Long Beach, California.
Oh wow!
And it's almost 95% intact, and it's America's highest automobile road, over 11,000 feet in the Colorado Rockies. It's just an incredible road, but somehow. It doesn't have the magic of Route 66. Just like say it's the people. It's the road of dreams. It's always been marketed that way, and it still is the road of dreams. And doing what you're doing, your interest in the people, you're going to do very well. I hope you do some recordings from the road.
Yes, definitely.
You're going to meet some amazing people that are worth talking to. Angel Delgadillo, the 94-year-old barber who uses his father's barber chair and lives in the house he was born in, who was instrumental in sparking this Route 66 renaissance because his town was bypassed, his town was dying, and he fought back all the way to the state capitol. And he's now 94. He has been on Super Bowl commercials. He's been in Playboy photo shoots. And his barbershop is a destination for legions of international Route 66 enthusiasts.
Man, very, very cool. Well, Jim, can you share some of, for listeners and people listening, where we can kind of learn more about you and on all the stuff that you share?
Yeah, Jim Hinckley's America, Facebook page, and JimHinkley'sAmerica.com.
Perfect. Okay. that's it. I'll have links to those two in the description for people listening, so they can click on that and go and check you out easily. But man, this was so fun, Jim. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your enthusiasm for this. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. My pleasure. And I look forward to meeting you on the road.
Yes, heck yeah. I will definitely take you up on that. I'll give you a heads up when we're coming through.
There's some great RV parks here in the Kingman area.
Okay, that's good to know.
Really, really nice RV parks. And will you be bringing a car with you or just RV?
Just the RV.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see if we can figure out how to get you up to Oakland. See if we can figure that out. Because that section of Route 66 is so beautiful. Even though it's it's so beautiful. Stevie Wonder can't take a bad photograph. It's just really, really beautiful.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to try to figure that out because we got like I think ours is a 34-foot motorhome, so it's pretty long. But
you don't want to probably do that.
We'll have to ride a donkey up there or something, I guess.
It's a little scary. Anything larger than a Volkswagen can make you a little nervous out there.
Okay,
I'm not bothered. I learned to drive on that section of road, so.
Oh wow! Okay,
I'm kind of used to it.
You're comfortable with that. But.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks again, Jim. Really appreciate you taking the time.
You bet, sir.
And there you have it. Episode 114 is all done. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the end. Thank you so much for Jim for being on, sharing that. That was really such a fun episode. Love talking to Jim and excited to meet him. Again, you can check out visiting66.com to learn more about Route 66 and kind of our whole trip and, see where we're going and see videos and tours of all these places. That's about it. I'm Travis DeRose. You can email me, travis@curiosityness.com. I'm on Instagram @TravDeRose. And if you know somebody who is interested in Route 66, they're going on a trip, or maybe they just love the mother road like I do, why don't you go ahead and send them this podcast? Send them visiting66.com. They might actually like it. It really helps out the show. The word of mouth stuff is good. And if you could leave a review on iTunes, go on or Apple Podcasts now. They changed the name. It's not iTunes anymore. If you can leave a review, that helps out the show, kind of gives me some cred when I'm looking for guests and that kind of stuff. But that's it. Episode 114 is done. I'll see you in episode 115, the part 2 of our Route 66 series. So long.